The plane screamed before it hit the water. Not the sound of metal tearing, that came later, but the sound of people realizing they were about to die. It was a raw, animal noise, rising from every corner of the cabin as the jet shuddered and dropped. Oxygen masks fell like white ghosts. Luggage burst from overhead bins. And in C-22B, Aisha Khan closed her eyes for half a second, not to pray for herself, but to steady her hands. She was a nurse. Panic was not allowed. Brace, brace. The flight attendants yelled, their voices breaking as the cabin tilted. Aisha leaned forward, gripping the seat in front of her, her mind racing faster than the aircraft. She counted breaths. 1, 2, 3. She had seen fear before, in emergency rooms, in disaster wards, in the eyes of patients who knew their time was running out. This was no different. Different setting. Same human terror. The impact came like a giant fist. Water exploded through the cabin as the jet slammed into the sea, tearing open the fuselage with a deafening roar. The lights went out. Cold rushed in. People screamed again, louder this time, as the plane began to sink. Aisha unbuckled instantly. Follow the lights. Move forward. Someone shouted, but chaos drowned all reason. Passengers clawed at each other, fighting for air, for exits, for life. The water climbed fast, icy and unforgiving, pulling shoes, bags, and bodies downward. Aisha forced herself toward the aisle, helping a trembling elderly woman undo her seatbelt. She pushed a young man toward an exit, then turned back again, scanning for anyone trapped. That was when she saw him. He was pinned. A man in an expensive suit, soaked now, heavy, was slumped across 2 seats near the emergency exit. A twisted metal beam had collapsed over his leg, trapping him. His face was pale, lips blue, eyes wide with terror. He was gasping, not from the water yet, but from pain and shock. "Please," he rasped. I can't move." The water reached their knees. Aisha dropped beside him, ignoring the shouts around them, ignoring the rising tide. "Look at me," she said firmly, gripping his face so he couldn't look away. "I'm Aisha. I'm a nurse. I need you to stay with me, okay?" He nodded weakly. She examined the situation in seconds. The beam was crushing his lower leg. He was bleeding badly. If she didn't act now, he would either drown or bleed out, or both. "Everyone else, go," she yelled. "Get out now." Someone hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you," she said, praying it wasn't a lie. The water reached his waist. Time was gone. Aisha wrapped her hands around the metal beam and pulled with everything she had. It didn't budge. She repositioned, braced her foot against the seat, and pulled again. Pain shot through her back. Nothing. The man began to sob. "Leave me, please. Save yourself." Aisha shook her head violently. "Not happening." She grabbed a loose fire extinguisher floating nearby, wedged it under the beam, and used it as a lever. She screamed as she pushed, muscles burning, lungs screaming for air. The beam shifted, just enough. "Now," she shouted. "Pull your leg," he screamed as he dragged himself free, blood clouding the water. Aisha grabbed him under the arms and hauled him toward the exit as the cabin tilted further, swallowing seats whole. They burst into open water moments before the jet disappeared beneath the surface. The night air hit them like knives. Waves crashed violently, pulling them apart. Aisha clung to a floating panel, keeping the man's head above water as he drifted in and out of consciousness. "Stay with me," she whispered, though her own body was shaking uncontrollably. "You're not dying tonight." Rescue boats arrived what felt like hours later, slicing through the darkness with blinding lights. Hands pulled them aboard. Someone wrapped a blanket around Aisha's shoulders. Another rushed the man onto a stretcher. As they loaded him into a helicopter, he grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the rotors. "Aisha," she said. "Thank you," he whispered. "You saved my life." She watched the helicopter disappear into the sky, then collapsed onto the deck, exhaustion finally claiming her. By morning, the world knew his name. Daniel Cross, billionaire CEO, tech mogul, one of the richest men in the country, had survived a catastrophic plane crash. News outlets called it a miracle. Headlines praised fate, luck, destiny. No one mentioned the nurse. Aisha returned home to her small, rented house on the edge of the city, sore, bruised, and emotionally drained. She slept for hours, then woke to the sound of engines outside. 3 black SUVs were parked in front of her gate. Her heart raced. Had something gone wrong? Had she done something wrong? A knock echoed through the house. She opened the door cautiously. A man in a tailored suit stepped forward, followed by 2 others. "Miss Aisha Khan?" he asked respectfully. "Yes, we're here on behalf of Mr. Daniel Cross." Her breath caught. "He's awake," the man continued. "And he asked us to find you." They escorted her to a private hospital room later that day. Daniel lay in bed, leg in a cast, face still pale, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "There you are," he said, smiling weakly. "The woman who refused to let me die." Aisha felt tears rise unexpectedly. "I just did my job." Daniel shook his head. "No, you did far more." He told her how he had lost consciousness and woken up alive, how the doctors said another minute underwater and he would have been gone. How he had replayed her face in his mind, her voice cutting through the terror. "I've built companies. I've bought islands," he said quietly. But none of that mattered in that moment. What mattered was a stranger who chose courage. He offered her money, more than she had ever imagined. Aisha thanked him, then gently refused. "I became a nurse to save lives," she said. "Not to profit from them." Daniel studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then let me do this the right way." Weeks later, Aisha arrived at her hospital to find a new emergency wing under construction. Her name was on the plaque. Scholarships were announced for nursing students from underprivileged backgrounds. Equipment arrived that the hospital had begged for years to afford. And one quiet morning, Daniel visited the ward, walking carefully on his healed leg. He watched Aisha move from bed to bed, calm, focused, compassionate. "You changed my life," he told her. She smiled softly. "We all change each other," she said. "Sometimes, we just don't realize it yet." And in a world obsessed with power and wealth, the story of a nurse who chose courage over fear became a quiet reminder that true greatness is not measured by what you own, but by who you refuse to leave behind.